Oh, it's so bright up here. It's a good thing I have hair. Amen. Let me start my message by saying this, that in every challenge we face in life, whether it's an inherent responsibility or a challenge or a call, we only have two options. Let me repeat that. In every challenge that we face in life, whether it's inherent responsibility or a challenge or a call, we only have two options. Those options are yes, I can, or no, I can't. When somebody calls us to the ministry or challenges us or even sometimes nominate us into the ministry, the same option is available to us. Yes, I can. No, I can't. Now, we've been talking about the Israelites throughout this month and their journey towards the Promised Land. They too have the same options. When they were at the doorsteps of the Promised Land and that they were about to go in, the challenge to them and the inherent responsibility to gain their freedom and to live in blessings and take possession of the land. They have again the same option, and that is where they can say yes, we can, or no, we can't. And so let's look at the first option that they have and how many people really responded to that option or the inherent responsibility that they had to gain their freedom. Let's start with Numbers 13, 30, and 31. Now we've been talking about him, a lot of this, Caleb, this month. It says, Then Caleb silenced the people where Moses said, We should go up and take possession of the land, for we can certainly do it. That's the option that Caleb took. And of course, we know that Joshua did the same. The next option we will find in verse 31. But the man who had gone up with him said, We can't attack those people. They are stronger than we are. So obviously they said no. And that, again, only two of them had taken the first option. And that is to say, yes, we can. And that is Joshua and Caleb. Now, let's take a look. Or how does God feel about either one, either of the options? How does God feel about it? So let's look at Numbers 14, verse 24. This is God's response to Caleb's option, or what he picked. That means that when he said, yes, we can. But because my servant Caleb, now this is God talking now, but because my servant Caleb has a different spirit and follows me wholeheartedly, I will bring him into the land he went to, and his descendants will inherit it. So this is how God felt with the option that Joshua and Caleb has taken. And again, the option that they had taken was, yes, we can. Now let's look at how did God respond to option number 2? Verse 14, I guess 11. Do we have that? Okay. The Lord said to Moses, how long these people will treat me with contempt? How long will they refuse to believe in me in spite of all the signs I have performed among them? Now, leave that there for a while. Let's take a look at it. This is God now talking. The Lord said to Moses, and this is God's response, and this is how he felt when people took the second option, that when they said, no, we can't. God said, people treat me with contempt. Now, what is the meaning of contempt? Contempt means disrespect, disregard, or to count worthless. Okay, let me repeat that. God said, these people that said, we can't, treat me with contempt. In other words, treat me with disrespect, disregard, or counted me worthless. Now let's try this. Let's see if anybody would repeat after me, okay? Let's talk to God. Okay, when I say God, then you follow, okay? Repeat after me. Say, God, you are worthless.
You are worthless.
You followed me? Now, anybody would like to say that, stand up. And tell God in his face that he is worthless. Of course not. Of course not. Nobody will say that. Did these people really say that, God, you're worthless? No. It is through their action, the road that they took, the option that they took, that God said, that made God said, you're counting me as worthless. So the end result was to make it simple, is that those who have taken, and we know again that it was Joshua and Caleb, those who have taken the first option that says, yes, we can enjoy the blessings of the promise, while those who had a can't attitude did not. And you know what happened to them? They all died in the desert. And so, God said that Caleb had a different spirit. And it is very obvious that the spirit of Caleb was faith. And he had a can-do spirit. So today we're going to look at some of the reasons behind the can-do spirit by looking some of the reluctant heroes of faith in the Bible. Let's begin with Moses. And let's see if we can find something here. Exodus chapter 3. We've been reading this so many times. Exodus chapter 3, beginning with verse 10. Okay, now God has called Moses here to go and lead the people out of slavery. So now go. This is God talking. I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. Verse 11, this is now the response. Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? Verse 12, and God said, I will be with you, and this will be the sign to you that it is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship me, worship God on this mountain. Moses said to God, suppose, verse 13. We don't have that. Moses said to God, suppose I go to the Israelites and say to them, the God your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? Then what shall I tell them? Okay, so that's the response of Moses to God's calling to lead the people out of Egypt. Go to now Exodus chapter 4, beginning with verse 1. There's another conversation. God still telling him to go. Moses answered, what if they do not believe me or listen to me, I say, and say, the Lord did not appear to you? So this is again the reply. Then the Lord said to him, "What is that in your hand?" A staff. He replied. Go to verse 10 now. Still chapter 4. Okay, the conversation is still going. God's still trying to get Moses to go. Okay, and Moses was giving all this response, these excuses that he can. Moses said to the Lord, "Pardon me, pardon your servant. Lord, I'm sorry, excuse me. I have never been eloquent, neither in the past nor since you have spoken to your servant." So Moses was again saying that, "I can't." Okay? So the Lord answered in verse 11, the Lord said to him, "Who gave human beings their mouths? Who makes them deaf or mute? Who gives them sight or makes them blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go, I will help you speak and will teach you what to say." But Moses said, "Pardon your servant. Please send someone else." This is the final or the response of the Lord. He said, verse 14, the Lord's anger burned against Moses. I don't know about you, but I don't like to be in front of an angry God. So here is the conversation, okay, between Moses and God saw him. As a matter of fact, God has been watching him throughout his life. And God already knew Moses. So now it's time for Moses to go. And God told him exactly what he needs to do. And God even assured him that his power was going to go with Moses. But Moses came up with all the excuses. "No, I can't. I'm not eloquent enough." Yay! Now let's look at another person from the book of Judges. His name is Barak. Not the former president, okay? Now, during the time of the Judges, where the Israelites were led by so-called judges. Okay? During this time, a woman was a judge, and his name was Deborah. And so they were oppressed by the Canaanites. So Deborah, that's was she there, talked to Barak. And so let's read there. She sent for Barak, son of Abinoam from Kadesh in Naphtali, and said to him, "The Lord, the God of Israel, commands you." So it's Deborah telling Barak that it's God who commands him. "Go! Take with you 10,000 men of Naphtali and Zebulun and lead them up to Mount Tabor. I will lead Sisera, the commander of Jabin's army, with his chariots and his troops to the Kishon River and give him into your hands." Now look at this. Barak said to her, "If you go with me, I will go. But if you don't go with me, I won't go." Can you imagine? A woman was telling him, "Go, I will fight with you." But this man said, "Well, if you go with me, I will go. If you don't go with me, I won't go." And so, can you imagine that? And Deborah said that, "Well, if you don't want to go, then the honor will go to me, not you." Now, how many men are here are afraid to go and tell their wives to go? I mean, can you imagine, like, your wife is telling you, "The roof is leaking. Can you go up there and fix it?" That's even a better answer. His answer that, "Well, if you go up with me, then I'll go." Women, what do you think? If you go up with me, your husband will, "If you go up with me, then I will go. But if you don't, I'm not going to go. I'm scared." So that's Another man here. He was coming up with all excuses not to go. In other words, to simply put it, he just said, I can't. Just like Moses who said, I can't. Send somebody else. Of course, God was angry. For Barak, the honor went to a woman instead of him. Let's look at another person here. Another reluctant hero of faith. Judges chapter 6, verse 12. Now, this is again during the time of the judges when the Israelites were oppressed. This time they were oppressed by the Midianites. And so from time to time, again, God will raise judges to help the Israelites delivered from their enemy. Now this time, we find Gideon in a hole, okay? Because they were hiding, because the Midianites during the harvest time, harvest season will come and rob them of their crops or their harvest. So they were hiding it, and so the angel found Gideon hiding in a hole. Verse 12. When the angel of the Lord appeared to Gideon, he said, the Lord is with you, mighty warrior. Pardon me, my Lord, Gideon replied. But if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? Where are all his wonders that our ancestors told us about when they said, did not the Lord bring us up out of Egypt, but now the Lord has abandoned us and given us into the hand of the Midian? The Lord turned to him and said, go in strength and save Israel out of Midian's hand. Am I not sending you? He said in verse 15, pardon me, my Lord, Gideon replied, but how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family. The Lord answered, I will be with you, and you will strike down all Midianites, living none alive. Gideon replied, if now I have found favor in your eyes, give me a sign that it is really you talking to me. So all three of them were called by God to do a ministry, and that is to deliver God's people from the hands of their enemy. Now, all three of them had given excuses. They have given the answer, no, I can't. Send somebody else. And so, I wonder how many of us here are like Moses, Barak, and Gideon. When God called us to duty, to the ministry, to press on toward the goal marked out for us, comes up with all the excuses in the world. All three of them have something in common. Let's take a look at them. Number one, all three of them said they're not qualified. All three of them said they're not qualified. Moses said, who am I to face a very powerful man? Who am I? I am nothing. I'm just a small potato. Barak said, a woman is more qualified. Gideon said, I am weak. I am even the weakest in my family. So all three of them, they said that they are not qualified. In a way, what they said about themselves were true. From a human perspective and from God's perspective, none of them were qualified. Moses was a murderer. He had no prior experience of leading people. He did lead the sheep in the desert. Barak was a chicken. He chickened out. He was not qualified. Gideon was hiding in the hole when the angel found him. All three of them were called to confront a very powerful enemy. They all said, I'm not qualified. But one thing we need to understand is that God knew that they were not qualified. God knew that none of the people that He had called is qualified. None of us are qualified to do the things that God have called us to do. But one thing we need to remember, that God does not call the qualified. He qualifies the called. God is not looking for qualification. I mean, of all the people that God has called, just study their lives. Of all the people that God has called into the ministry, none of them is qualified. Again, as a matter of fact, none of us is qualified to do the things that God wants us to do. We do a little training, but most of us doesn't have any experience. So why do you think God called them if they're not qualified? Have you ever thought of that? Why did God call them if they are not qualified? Because it is not on our own strength. It is not on our own qualification that God called us to do the things. The things that God wants us to do doesn't need our qualification. When Moses said, I can't do it, I can't even speak, God said, well, who gave you your mouth? See, it is not about the people that He called. It is all about God. That's why God said, you are treating me with contempt. That's what God is saying here. So, the next time, remember this, and I want you to get this, okay? The next time you tell God that you are not qualified, you are the best candidate. Let me repeat that. The next time God has called you to do things in the ministry or whatever it is that God wants you to do, and you tell Him, Lord, I'm not qualified, that means you are the best candidate for the job. Because when you say that you are the most qualified, then you are not the best candidate for the job. Because now you are just trusting on your own strength. Another thing that they have in common was fear of the unknown. They do not know what's going to happen in the future. I mean, most of us are afraid of the future. We do not know what is ahead of us. Now, the unknown, of course, is not in the past, because the past is already known. The unknown is that we are afraid is the future. Let me help you with that. How many of you are afraid of the unknown? If God's going to call you, said, I'm sending you to Cambodia. How many of us would like to go to Cambodia and help our missionaries? Nobody? Or to India. They're building their church right now in India, and it's a huge building that they are building. If you are called to go to India, to Cambodia, there are things that we do not know. I mean, for me, I have a very sensitive stomach. Then I fear that if I go there, I eat the food there, that I'm gonna get sick. So there is fear of the unknown. However, okay, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 20 years ago, you had the same fear. You do not know what the future brings. Remember when you sign, those who own a home, remember the time when you first signed the paper, know that you are now an owner of a property? Did you know what was going to happen 2 years after that? Or 5 years after that? Were you sure that you're still going to have a job 5 years later down the road, 10 years later down the road? Of course you did not. You did not know. But the good news is you're still here. Right? You are still here. If you were not sure of the future, if you are afraid of the future, then why did you sign the paper? That's faith. Some of us are afraid because, well, let me give you an example. And I talk about this, and I told you, I mentioned this several times. Yeah, if I'm going to ask you, when are you going to take a vacation in the Philippines? Oh, when we have money. Right? Or if you ask people like, when are you going to get married? most of the answers are like, well, it's hard to get married right now because the cost of living is too high. So in other words, you're afraid of the future. You're afraid of the unknown. Well, let me ask you this. When was the last time it was cheap? Really? When was the last time that the cost of living was cheap? I know some of you was like, oh yeah, I remember those days when things were very cheap. How many of you remember that the gas was 90 cents a gallon? Was that cheap? Was that cheap? No, that time that was not cheap. You were only making $3 an hour. So when was the last time it was cheap? It was never cheap. So when we say we are afraid of the future, we are afraid of the unknown. Remember this, you have already taken some steps. You have already taken some steps of faith. That's why you are here. So don't be afraid of the unknown. That was the complaint of these three people here, and including the Israelites. We do not know what's going to happen. So fear of the unknown. Remember this, that the advantage that we have, why we should not fear the future or the unknown, is that God already knew the future. That's the advantage that we have as Christians. In other words, God is not going to call us to do things that He doesn't know. God already, everything is exposed right in front of God. He knows what is today. I mean, God could see the past all the way to the future. He already sees it. So when He calls us and put us there, He's not just blindly put us there. God already sees the future. And all we have to do is trust in Him. Another thing that they have in common is a fear of rejection or defeat. Moses said, they're not going to listen to me. Remember the armies of Israel that faced Goliath? They trembled in fear when they faced him. They fear, they have the fear of rejection or defeat. Now here's the truth when it comes to our journey in life or whatever God has called us to do. That victory along the way, during our journey or during the time we're doing ministry or whatever it is that God has called us to do, victory is not always guaranteed. There will be times that you are going to fall. There will be times that you are going to stumble. There will be times that you are going to be defeated. But, just like David, we need to get up. We need to get a haircut. We need to put some lotion. We need to put some lipstick and move on. You need to pick up yourself. But one thing I know for sure is that God promised that He will never leave us nor forsake us. God is going to go with us to all the way to the end. So do not be afraid of defeat or rejection. You know, we're so afraid that we'll be rejected, right? I mean, I remember, in my younger days, they said, the young people, the millennials have it so easy now. Okay? When you like a girl, what you gotta do is text them. Right? Boys? In our days back in the Philippines, you gotta go talk to the dad before you even go inside. or he will chase you with a knife. It's hard. But, I remember I had a friend that in high school that before he go visit the girls, he would drink. He would get drunk. So he would have all the boldness to tell his love to the girl. But it's not easy to be rejected. It's not easy to be defeated. But again, always remember this, that along the journey in this life, whatever God has called you to do, victory is not always guaranteed. The real victory is at the end. The real victory is at the end. But as we journey along this life, we're going to be rejected, we're going to be defeated, but we need to pick up ourselves and then, just like David, he moved on. Last one. Wow, we're going home early today. It's good. Now, each one of them did not believe in themselves. Just by saying, I can't do it, they did not believe in their God-given strength and ability. In order for us to succeed in our calling, in our endeavor, is that to believe in our God-given strength and ability is crucial to succeed. Caleb said, we can certainly do it. With all the giants that they are facing in the land, he said, we can certainly do it. That's believing in themselves. That's believing in their God-given ability and strength. And that is what we call faith. When David heard Goliath challenge the army of Israel, the army of Israel was shaking in fear. And they said, no, we can't. They even ran away from him. No, we can't defeat this guy. He's so big. Well, you know what David said? Even with what Goliath told him, Am I a dog that you're going to send me a boy? David was not intimidated. He believed in his God-given ability. He told the giants, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you and chop your head off and feed you to the birds. Now tell me if that's not boldness. Tell me if that's not believing on his God-given ability. Yes, we need to trust in our God-given ability. We do not trust on our own strength, but we need to trust on the strength that God gave us. That's why when David said, I'm going to kill you. Can we say the same? When we are faced with an obstacle, or we are faced with enemy or a ministry or a calling that God called us to do. Deborah said, I will go. He didn't. Barak said, I will not go. Deborah said, a woman said, I will go. Paul said, I can do all things through Christ who give me strength. Come on now. Don't be like Barak or chicken out. One thing we need to understand here, that all three of them, with all the excuses that they gave, fear of rejection, did not believe in themselves, fear of the unknown, and all those. One thing that we need to understand, God never let them off the hook. God did not say, okay, you're a chicken, so I'm going to go to the other person. God never let them off the hook. What was God's response to Moses? Who gave you your mouth? That was the response. In other words, we can come up with all the excuses in the world. We can all say that I fear. We can all say that, I'm scared. But God said, go. And I think it's very difficult when God tells us to go and we're still very reluctant to do it, because we will be forced to do it. To have faith is to say, I can do it. Let me close, because the buffet is waiting. It will all boil down to this. Faith or fear is really how you view God. Let me repeat that. Whether you have faith or you have fear, it's really the reflection of how you view God. That is why God took it very personal. When the people said, no, we can't, God said, you are disrespecting me. When they said, no, we can't do it, God said, you're telling me that I'm worthless. It's like saying, God, you're a liar. And God said, with all the things I have done for you, with all the power that I have shown to you, you still disrespect me? Wow. That's something that we need to really they really think about. And they did not even tell God on his face, like, God, you're worthless. It's just the how they responded. It's the options that they have taken. Again, whether they say, yes, we can, or no, we can't. It is really how we view God and who he is. Fear is just like saying, God, you're not reliable. Fear is such saying, what God said is not true. It's like saying, God cannot be trusted. So instead of coming up with all the excuses, why don't you say, with God on my side, I can certainly do it. This is the inherent responsibility if we want to enjoy the blessings and the promise of God. There has to have faith. That faith that says, yes, I can do it. Let's pray.